On today's Monday Mailbag episode, the biggest Padres question as of right now is who will fill their managerial vacancy? Can MLB legend Albert Pujols actually be the solution that nobody saw coming?
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, October 27th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for I think 6 years now, not just for this podcast though, but various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Be sure to go check that out, and be sure to go check me out on the socials. You know I'm at Javipeno, Javiipeno. Feel free to also check out the YouTube for the show if you want to see my face and just a visual platform, because apparently that is all the bees these days is the YouTube format for podcasts, which is very weird. It's almost like an oxymoron, but nonetheless very, very cool indeed. Today's episode, guys, we are breaking down the news about Albert Pujols emerging as a potential candidate. We're going to talk about that, how I feel about him, and another potential candidate that has also emerged in the news as of late, and then get to some of your mailbag questions that cover a host of different topics and whatnot, and I love getting into that. So let's begin. Albert Pujols. I'm going to kind of freebase this a little bit and just talk with my gut feelings on this. So I've been following the news lately, as anybody else has, and apparently he has emerged as a potential candidate for the Padres. Right? Everybody probably knows who Albert Pujols is. One of the best players to ever play baseball. He is a first ballot, Hall of Fame type of player. He's amazing. And in response, actually, they actually asked Tatis, our boy, about this, and he actually gave a response, claro que sí. You know what I mean? He said, of course. Did you guys like my Spanish there? I don't have to use it much on the podcast, but that's what his response was in response to the kind of Pujols rumors and whatnot. And I think that, everybody would, of course, be interested. I was listening to an interview with, I believe, Aiden Gonzalez on 97.3 The Fan. And he basically emphasized that, the first and foremost thing that you have to understand about Albert Pujols is he really is greatly, greatly revered in MLB circles, amongst players, I imagine, especially. And that makes sense, right? This is baseball players love that stuff, right? Look at Stephen Vogt. He got a position, right? There's the fraternity in sports, as we all know, in every sport, that athletes are going to respect other athletes. And a player like Pujols, who, don't get me wrong, he was always a home run guy. That is what he is known for. That is a thing that he was good at. But he sometimes doesn't get credit for being a little bit more than a home run guy, right? This was a guy who was so good at just drawing walks, having a high batting average, right? His career batting average is 296, career 374 on base. He did it all. This is a first ballot Hall of Fame player, but I don't think he always got credit for his skills at the plate. And people, as Aiden also brought up, really revere not just his legend, his stature, but also that he had a lot of in-game intelligence, a lot of baseball intelligence, right? And I think that absolutely matters when it comes to how players like other legends, right? It's not just that he was a personality or he had some big moments. It's also that he was just a student of the game, I think, and that gives him a leg up. And I think that my opinion on whether or not he should be the Padres manager, I said this before, my everydayers know this, but I kind of don't know what the Padres need, right? So I'm not looking for anyone in particular. I do think someone who's a little bit more forward-thinking and progressive. I think someone who, that would be my initial standpoint, is someone who's going to be a little bit wild, right? Someone who's going to change up the lineup a bunch, who's going to have Tatis bat fifth one day. I'm almost tempted to say that's how radical I want to go. Obviously, that would be a step too far. Tatis should be a top of the lineup type of player, but that's just an example, right? Gabe Kapler, I've brought up on this show. Not someone that I'd want to hire as the Padres manager, but there is something to be said for, Gabe Kapler had some problems, I understand that, but that team won 108 games one year, and all those players were random players, with the exception of Buster Posey, who had another great season. Brandon Crawford randomly knew how to hit, right? I'm just saying that was a team that mixed and matched, that had all these random players brought in, and I don't think Kapler gets enough credit for that. But more importantly than that is just, I would like to see something different for this team. I don't want necessarily a manager who's going to go in there and say, "Oh, well, Xander Bogaerts is great. He's a legend. He's been good for a long time. I'm just going to trust him for 90 games." Luis Arraez, he's a 3-time batting champ, right? I'm just going to be like, I don't care if he has a 620 OPS over the last month and a half. He's still going to stay as the number 2 hitter. Yes, that is me complaining about Mike Schilt a little bit. I would like some mix and matching. I'd like a little bit of creativity because it's just something that this team hasn't tried before. I've been making this case for the Padres and their philosophy and their strategy as an organization for a while, which is just let's try something new a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not 100% in that direction because they did try something new. They brought on AJ Preller, they do all these trades, and now they are the Padres on a national stage, on a cultural story that they become because they changed things initially. So I do want to give a lot of faith to an extent of just being like, you know what, maybe they should just be like, let's just stay with our big star, stars and scrubs type of strategy, and maybe it could work. And it almost worked before, right? So I could see that. But at the same time, I just look at this team and say, maybe we don't have to do all the big moves at the deadline or in free agency. Instead, you do some under the radar stuff. Look at them last year. They did under the radar moves last year with Solano and Profar, and then Higashioka was part of the Juan Soto trade. But in some sense, they traded one player for a bunch of other, decent players, and Grisham too, who ended up being good the second year. But even still, it was like a different way of building the team. Instead, you said, we already have the stars. We don't have to just go star hunting. So I want to take that philosophy and apply it a little bit to the managerial vacancy, which is like, let's not get someone who's just an extension of the front office. Let's not get someone who's just this old guy who keeps it simple, maybe like a Mike Schilt, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-Mike Schilt, but I just kind of want to try a different strategy, right? Melvin and Schilt, those were like old heads, right? Those are the old school guys. So what if you try someone a little bit new school? And I would be a little bit worried that Albert Pujols would be a little bit more of the old school approach, right? Now, don't get me wrong. It's totally possible that he comes out, look, I'm a Chargers fan, Greg Roman, right? Offensive coordinator. He's always been running the ball his entire career. And all of a sudden this year, he's throwing the ball. It's possible that Albert Pujols could be like, yeah, I'm going to try some new things. I'm going to have different lineups. I'm going to bring out guys in a different way. And yes, that could absolutely be helpful. And I do think it matters if players are going to have someone in that locker room to just really respect, especially for a locker room like the Padres, right? With so many big personalities, with Manny, with Tatis, with Merrill, and not in like any diva sense, but just like these are big personalities. They're big players. Michael King and Joe Musgrove and a lot of great relievers, right? There are some big personalities on this team. So I am wondering, would have a presence like Albert Pujols, nobody is going to be like, oh, I don't respect that guy. Like, why would I listen to that guy? He's the dude, right? And Tatis, apparently, really good relationship with him. Like, he adheres him, as evidenced by his voice of approval for if he was brought on as the manager, he'd be like, of course, I'm all in on that. So it's tough. But at the same time, like, basically, I hope what you guys understand is I've illustrated that I don't know necessarily what direction. If you're someone who's like, we just need a locker room leader presence guy, I totally get that. If you're someone who's like, let's have someone who's creative and can do different things with players and maybe a little bit of an out of left field hire that isn't related to Preller, I'm also a fan of that too. It's a really tough conversation, and I don't have the answer. So I'd love for you guys to leave in the comments below of this video. Hit me up on there, and then I would gladly hear your takes on the Padres managerial position. But we're not done yet, guys. We got to talk about some of your mailbag questions and another candidate real quick that has also emerged as a potential candidate for the Padres. But first, guys, let me take a second to talk to you about one of our sponsors, and that is our friends over at FanDuel. You know them, you love them, because they make the games exciting, right? And with the NBA back, there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game, or if you want to ride some hot hand, if someone's they've got 5 threes, if Wemby is doing Wemby things, FanDuel also have live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins, or when, if you're really confident. You know what I mean? So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we're back here thriving and vibing on the Locked On Padres podcast. Let's continue talking about the manager vacancy because that's what we all want to talk about, right? There was a story in The Athletic with Carlos Hernandez, ex-catcher for the Padres, ex-MLB player, voicing very flamboyantly almost like how much he would love to be the manager. And if you're wondering, he does have some experience. Right? Like, this is a guy who is a broadcaster primarily, but he also has some experience, right? Hernandez recently completed, reading from the Athletic article, recently completed his 14th season as the Padres' primary color analyst on Spanish language television and radio broadcasts. After a decade-long playing career with the Dodgers, Padres, and St. Louis Cardinals, the Venezuelan native managed the Toros de Tijuana into the Mexican Summer League postseason in 2004. He worked the next 3 years as a catching coordinator for the Padres, served as Venezuelan winter ball manager of the Leones del Caracas from 2006 to 2008, and reunited with former Padres general manager Kevin Towers as a catching coordinator for the Arizona Diamondbacks from 2010 to 2013. That's its coaching experience, but he's also been around the organization, and being bilingual, in theory, also helps him meeting other players, being kind of familiar with it. That's kind of what the article gets into. But I think what I love is it's just his attitude. In quotes, I want to be a champion in San Diego. I want to be a champion manager. I want as a player, and I don't want to have just the name manager. I want to have the name of a winning manager. I don't want to compare myself to somebody else, but I want to do it because I was born to play baseball, man. I come here to play baseball. All my years, all my career that I have in this beautiful country is baseball, right? And he goes on to talk about that, and I think it's interesting. So the first thing that I think of note to talk about this emergence as a candidate is, one, love the confidence, love the former player, same thing. Now, I would probably wager that a former player like Pujols would probably carry a little bit more cachet. And most importantly, you got around the sport around the Kevin Towers regime, so there's not as much of a relationship with AJ Preller, I would imagine. And don't get me wrong, he's been around the team, but maybe not as much. And what do we know about AJ Preller is that he has a history of being attached and connected and giving opportunities to people that he's been with before. And since the last two people that the Padres have had as manager, it's possible it might be like, all right, well, we tried that. Now we're going back to my hole of people that I like, right? It's totally possible. But I think that the other thing with Hernandez here is just, it's been a while since he's been 100% directly involved in the game. But then again, like I just said in the first segment, maybe something new is necessary. So it's at least a candidate that is worth talking about. I don't think that I would put him super high up on it, but I respect the confidence. Like, having someone who's just going out and contacting the Athletic and being like, yeah, I want to interview, let's do this. And I've been around the team. I know I'd be great. I want to be a legend. Oh, I love San Diego. All that sort of stuff is at least worth talking about, right? And I don't know, guys. I really don't know who's going to be the Padres manager. In some ways, I'm almost tempted to say who cares. There are times when I'm like, who cares, just because I have no idea what direction they should go in. And I frankly don't have any idea who it's going to end up being. I predicted Scott Service just because I thought with the connection to Preller and with them bringing him on as an assistant, a special assistant first, that's what they did with Schilt too after Schilt was fired by the Cardinals. This case, Scott Service with the Seattle Mariners. So it's tough, but we're going to have to see. We're going to have to see how it plays out, man. But with that all said, let's start unpacking some of your mailbag comments and questions. Remember, you can send your comments and questions in the description of the YouTube, the comment section, actually. Feel free to reach out on there, and I will respond to all of them, including some of the trolls, right? Let's talk really quickly, though. At Eric Munoz, 99999 says, biggest reason I'm glad Schilt is gone is because Arráez is booty. He says, yeah, this, of course, is a response to Friday's player review for Luis Arráez. I know some people were annoyed. Someone said, why aren't you hyping up the Padres? To that person, I say, it's not my job, right? Like, I'm supposed to analyze and keep you up to date on whatever the latest goings are. I think that my biggest beef with Schilt is that he could be a little bit stubborn and sometimes refuse to change things up. The reason why I don't kill him for that is because they still won 90 games, and last year they won 93. So it's hard for me to hate on a manager for that. It's not his fault that Manny Machado is the worst player, the worst really superstar player of his class to be in the playoffs, right? Like, this is a guy with a sub 700 OPS in the postseason, right? He just had that 1-2 home run, and that was it. So I'm just saying, it's not the manager's fault. But I'd be curious to see, right? I'm going to be really curious to see. By the way, according to Jim Bowden of The Athletic, and we're going to be talking about free agents, by the way. Don't worry. I know a lot of you want to hear about free agents. We're going to talk about him. But he actually projected Luis Arráez for 2 years, $30 million. So again, all of y'all that keep harassing me about Arráez, if he's really that great, why is that what he's projected to get. That's what I would say to those people. That being said, though, 2 years, $30 million for Arráez is a decent deal. I've talked about this on Friday. A decent deal. If you are a team that has a lot of stuff in your lineup, you've already got enough power, and maybe you don't have enough budget, not a bad thing to be like, maybe we can get him back to what he used to be. And if you're a bad team, you might want to sign him too and then flip him at the deadline for something if he turns back to what he was before. It's just it's a low risk type of contract potentially for him. But anyway, we'll see how that pans out. But yeah, man, Arráez was very bad this year. Robert Birdie, 9938. Speaking of Arráez, also had some takes. He said Arráez is a really good dude and he would have been fine if the rest of the lineup around him was slugging and driving in runs. Unfortunately, our lineup was really bad in the slugging department. He was incredibly frustrating to watch when there were runners in scoring position less than 2 outs, and he would hit a fly ball to left or right, and that would kill the rally. His defense was okay, but nothing impressive. I actually disagree. I think it was pretty bad. But you're right. Not the worst in the world. I expect him to be let go, and he will be okay in another team that can use his limited skill sets. Yeah, I really don't think he'll be awful. Like, I really think the right team, I've been watching baseball for a long time. He's not old, which I think is important. The reason why he's not going to get paid big time, and if you're a team that really needs a smash free agent, that's not the direction I would go in. The fact that he's hitting the ball softer than ever, like, for a guy who never hit the ball hard in the first place, that's really concerning. And we'll see. Like, there was a lot of bloop singles this year whenever he did hit the singles, and that's not good, right? But anyway, really curious to see how he goes. We got a comment from Sam All AR Dace. Sam All Ardace. I don't know how to say this. 2522. He says, "Get Aaron Boone." Aaron Boone as manager for the Padres would make next to no sense. He hasn't been fired, and for those who don't know and don't follow and aren't in the New York area, having WFAN on your radio while you drive, he's hated here, and I think most importantly is Aaron Boone. The reason everyone hates him, I think, the most is because the Yankees as an organization, their primary thing isn't winning anymore. It's investing and using it as a business. And I think the Yankees fans are going insane because they're like, we just know that nobody will pay. Like, we'll never have new people. They could miss the playoffs, whatever. Cashman won't go anywhere, right? Boone won't go anywhere, and that's the unfortunate thing. So Boone is just not going to be available, so I don't think this is a possibility for the Padres. And I also wouldn't love it, right? I just don't think that him as a in-game manager has been that impressive. I think he's been carried a little bit by some superstar players like your Aaron Judge, your Juan Soto. I think last year in the World Series, starting Nestor Cortez, or not even starting him, using Nestor Cortez in that situation when he hadn't pitched in 2 months to go up against Freddie Freeman is one of the worst manager decisions I've seen in a long time. I don't care what the numbers tell you. I don't care if there were worse players in your bullpen. Guy hadn't pitched in 2 months, and he's a starter. Why'd you use him? Sorry, not to rant about Aaron Boone, but I don't see that as a possibility. I'd much rather go down the route of, you know what, Pujols doesn't necessarily have the most managing experience, but screw it, he's a baseball legend. I'd much rather go in that direction, but that's just me. But we're not done yet, guys. We got more mailbag questions to answer, starting with... Just kidding. I got to take a second, guys, to talk to you about one of our sponsors, and that is our friends over at Game Time. You know what I love about Game Time, man? It's just so dang convenient. You know what I mean? And with the NFL season back, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans, cheering on your team, having fun, having a couple brewskis, getting excited, getting upset when they throw interceptions or have horrible turnovers in the weird, wacky sport of football. But you know what isn't going to be random and wacky or frustrating whatsoever? Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to fans because it's fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best prices. Plus, all fees are included. I know. It sounds great, and it is great, right? The price you see is the price you pay. Pulled up Game Time, just a couple taps. You see amazing deals. Your favorite NFL games, you want to go for less than $100, right? Not bad, right? Not bad at all. And the app made it super simple. You can see the exact view from your seat before you buy. Zone deals is a great option as well. You just pick a section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. And honestly, I mean, frankly, y'all, it's just cheaper, easier, and it's just less stressful than all the other ways that I've bought tickets before. So go check it out. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. That's right, guys. Terms apply. But again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. Download Game Time today. And just like that, everybody, we are back, thriving and vibing into the final segment of this here podcast. And stay tuned till the end so you get a preview of what we got cooking up this week. It's gonna be fun, seriously. We got like I'm not out of ideas, guys. Don't worry. Right? And yes, I will be ignoring the World Series as much as possible because I really do think that the Dodgers are going to win. As I talked about with my boy Paul Holden last week, go check that out. Crossover with the Locked On Rockies host. Speaking of Rockies, Robin Murray also said Rockies need to hire Bob Melvin as manager so he can add another NL West team to his resume of the other ones he's managed. I feel for Rockies fans having to watch a really bad team year in and year out. At least they have a nice ballpark and great beer to drink. That would be really funny, by the way, if Melvin went to the Rockies, that he's now managed 3 of the teams at NL West. That would be really funny. But in all seriousness, yeah, like I bring this comment up also. Guys, whenever you're down, just be thankful we ain't Cincy. Frankly, we ain't Milwaukee. Yes, I said it. We ain't Milwaukee. We're not Cleveland. We're not Tampa. We're not the Rockies. We're not the A's. We're not the Reds, even, you could argue. We're not the Cardinals. There's a lot of teams in worse positions than the Padres in Major League Baseball right now. Even if they're in a dicey one, at least they've put together a good product and have been a team that clearly cares about winning baseball games. Just keep that in mind. Next one, though, we got here. Niebla and Nevin. Says Silas Robert Shaw 8122. I snicker every time people talk about Bruce Bochy. The Padres did him and Flannery dirty. I love them. I grew up with them on the 84 team. Bochy ain't coming back. That said, I am comfortable with Niebla and Phil Nevin as potential candidates. Service is highly probable. Don't forget he was the Rangers. He was with the Rangers as director of player development from 2004 to 2010. And Preller was head of international scouting from 2004 to 2014. Yeah, I agree. Niebla and Phil Nevin, totally fine. I think the only case that I would have against Niebla is just that I think he's done such a great job with the pitching that while there's nothing about him in terms of experience that disqualifies him whatsoever, I would just be wondering, man, I like having him cook with the pitchers, though. And if he's the manager, would that take away from that? Maybe. It's possible. I wouldn't hate it, but I'm just saying that would be an unfortunate loss for the Padres. It feels like you'd be taking a step forward and a step backwards, potentially, which is why I'm against it. Someone left a comment on my video about the Tatis player review from a couple weeks ago. He's saying, Javi, I may not have agreed with you on Tatis, but I loved your good bad on Manny. I appreciate your knowledge and breakdowns on the players. And FYI, I love Manny. Keep up the good work. And he said, what I disagreed with was the numbers part. Right? Or not the numbers part, but his uninterested play and that swag he had is gone. He might as well not have even showed up against the Cubs. He's undisciplined and going through the motions. After his PED suspension, he has never been the same. Talked about this in the Padres player review for Tatis. I get it, why people are upset with Tatis and thinking he looked like Griffey, and instead he's just a really great star. Again, top 10 in wins above replacement. He's a very good all-around player who I still have hope for going forward, but I understand the frustration that he looked like a guy that was going to be 40 home runs, hit 280, have a 350, 360 on base, and potentially on top of that, his emergence as an amazing right fielder defensively, that he was going to be that level of a star, like an 8-win player. And instead, he's just really good. But we'll see how the rest of that sort of pans out. At Troy Rice 3155 says, watching the Blue Jays mercy rule the Dodgers in Game 1 has me praying for a hitting coach change. Our approach this season was terrible, and we do have guys capable of pop. I would sell my soul to get David Popkins to San Diego. That would be, for those who don't know, he's the Blue Jays hitting coach. I think that there's an argument to be made that getting the hitting coach right might be more important than the manager. I'm kind of with you on this. Heading into the season for the Padres, what did we hear from all the reports? You can go read Dennis Lin, AJ Casfell, just see what they added, right? Remember when Yuli Gurriel got at bats for this team? They prioritized seemingly putting the ball in play and low strikeouts. That's not a horrible thing to prioritize, right? But my issue is consistently having a great offense in the regular season. You need guys that are going to put the ball in the seats or hit for extra base hits, which is why the additions of guys like Arráez, to a degree, even a guy like O'Hearn, that's why I wonder, like, the Padres should be prioritizing power a little bit more. They have plenty of on-base guys. They have been good in on-base for a while now. In fact, the Padres, I don't know if you guys knew that, in terms of on-base percentage as a team, that has not been the Padres' problem for a very, very long time. And it's kind of frustrating, right? In terms of on-base percentage this year, the Padres were 15th, right? That's not too bad. It got worse as the season went on, right? Don't get me wrong. But even before that, right, in 2014, they were, let's see here, what were they in on base percentage? They were 26 in on base percentage. Well, it's interesting that they also really the gate at putting the ball in the seats that year. But even still, for the most part, like, remember when they traded for Grisham? The Padres, when it comes to on-base percentage, hasn't been like an enormous problem for the team. In fact, in 2023, their worst season, remember that? They were first in on-base percentage. So it's almost like that is not the number one goal. If you can just hit for extra base hits, less hits is better. And they just haven't had guys driving dudes in. So I think that having a different hitting coach and having a different philosophical strategy of being like, I'm okay if we add, let's pretend not as good, but a Kyle Schwarber type. Someone who's still going to get on base a little bit, but they're going to hit for power. Look at Gavin Sheets. He was such a big part of this team this year, and he didn't have an on-base percentage, but he was a better player than Luis Arraez because of the slugging. So I think that's something that they should absolutely prioritize. And yes, watching the Blue Jays, who of course lost in the second game, but you look at that team with Vladdy having a great season, with Springer having a great season, with BOMBSHELL having a bounce back, with Alejandro Kirk having a bounce back. They have a really good lineup, and I am wondering, would a different change in philosophy, instead of being like, let's not swing at everything, let's draw walks, let's be like, you know what? If Xander Bogaerts struck out more, but he hit 20 home runs next year, I would absolutely take that. That isn't a fair exchange. I just think that gives you a higher floor for your offense. Last thing, though, that I want to get into, and unfortunately we're not going to finish all the mailbag questions. We got some on some free agent guys, and we have some troll comments, but NVPS Stonecrest says, window closing? Wrong. Look at the Mariners, Blue Jays, and Tigers. When was their window open? Because before this season, they seemed very closed to me. This is an amazing, amazing point, guys. Remember when the Blue Jays, and I think I brought this up last week as well, but I want to talk about it one more time. Again, I already just mentioned, be grateful that you're not the rest of those other organizations, but Seattle, everyone was saying, man, we blew it. We did not capitalize. We didn't trade for some guys. Guess what? They traded for some dudes, went out there, and they almost made the World Series, if not for that George Springer home run. Shout out Puerto Rican power. And then the Blue Jays are a great example. 5th in payroll. You extend Vladdy. You trade for Andres Gimenez, who wasn't even very good this year. And yet, they found themselves with a chance to go to the World Series. Now, I think the National League is better than the American League, and I think that has a little bit to do with it. But for me, that's a great point. The Blue Jays, what had they done? They'd struck out on every free agent. They didn't have a lot of farm system anymore, right? They gave up Gabriel Moreno. They lost some other big time players. BOMBSHELL had a down season in 24, right? So I look at that and say, absolutely, things can change at any time. The Blue Jays, don't get me wrong, American League. They don't have the Dodgers to deal with, right? The Yankees aren't trying as much as they used to. But overall, it's just important to remember that as long as you're just in the mix, you have a chance, right? It's not impossible that the Blue Jays beat the Dodgers in the World Series. I think it's unlikely. I had the Blue Jays in 5. Or I'm sorry, the Dodgers in 5. That was my personal prediction. But I think that this guy makes a great point. Those teams, I remember everyone saying, dang, the Blue Jays lost their window. You remember when they had Marcus Semien? And I think it was Marcus Semien finished top 3 in MVP and Robbie Ray win the Cy Young, and they missed the playoffs. Everyone was like, that was the best chance they had, and they didn't make it. Guess what? Now they're in the World Series. So that is a good thing that I'm going to leave y'all with. And now, before concluding, let me just tell you, rest of the week in terms of episodes. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about some of the biggest questions for the Padres. Just giving you a little bit of update on, what I think are the biggest questions for the Padres this offseason. Just my personal take on them. Then we've got Xander Bogaerts, Jay Cronenworth, and Padres bullpen as a whole player reviews in the bag, kind of being worked on in the process of it. And then we're going to start breaking down via The Athletic the top MLB free agents for the offseason and talk about who is available, and frankly just talk about the free agents because it's just fun to talk about that, and who might be a likely candidate for the Padres, if any. Going to be a lot of fun, guys, so don't go anywhere, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast from, and check out the YouTube. But until next time, everybody, you've been listening to the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe again, and last but not least, look forward to the player reviews. Stay golden, and stay faithful, my Friar faithful homies. Take care.